In the second year of the biennium, the Vermont legislature has considered ethics, housing, victims' rights, jobs, legalizing marijuana, and spending, among other issues. I'm Eric Clemons for Comcast Newsmakers at Vermont College of Fine Arts in Montpelier. The Speaker of the House in his final term, Shap Smith, joins Newsmakers once again right now. Mr. Speaker, thanks for being back with us on the program.
It's great to be here, Eric.
There's been much work in the area of workforce housing. Would you outline some of the measures and why this action is so important to the Vermont economy?
Well, housing here in Vermont, like it is in so many other places in the country, is really tight. We don't have a lot of new housing, and particularly for young families, they're finding it very hard to find things that they can afford.
Right.
So what we've been doing is helping with down payment assistance, which we did last year in a bill that we passed, wildly successful for first-time home buyers. And this year, we're trying to spur some development of additional workforce housing by making investments in the infrastructure in those communities. Pilot programs, we're hopeful that it'll pass by the end of the session.
Starting last year, the Vermont legislature has been undertaking comprehensive education reform. What are some of the key elements of this reform and what is left to do?
Well, one of our challenges is that we have a governance structure in Vermont that's left over from 120 years ago. It doesn't reflect what the modern day education looks like, and it doesn't reflect the decline in our students. So what we've done is we've passed legislation to allow larger governance units so that there can be more flexibility for kids in the programming that they get, efficiencies in administration, and the ability to move teachers within geographical regions so that we can have flexibility in staffing. Really, at the end of the day, it's all about quality education for the kids because we know that's what's important for our future economy and civic society.
Your House colleague, Tony Klein, says that over the course of the past 15 years or so, Vermont has moved to the forefront of energy generation and efficiency, becoming a leader in the U.S. How will Vermont keep on that positive trajectory?
Well, we know why this is important. 15,000 Vermont jobs relate directly to renewable energy, and that number keeps growing. And we know that climate change is real and it's a problem for us. You look at our winter this year when we had no snow and our economy relies on a lot of skiing. We need to deal with it. So we need to make investments in renewable energy development. We need to make sure that there's flexibility in siting, recognizing that neighbors have an interest in what's happening as well. And we've got to make sure that there is the kind of capacity for storage of intermittent energy sources like wind and solar so that we can use this for long-term development.
At the beginning of the session, you stated that you supported legalization of marijuana, but there were too many unanswered questions. The timing wasn't quite right, and you just weren't sure it would pass. Where does that legislation stand right now? Because it's a tricky issue, as we talked about before recording this.
It is a tricky issue. Look, here's the thing. When my 8th grade son and his classmates say to me that it's easier to get marijuana in their junior high school than it is alcohol or cigarettes in a regulated market, we've got a problem on our hands. And we can say with assurance that the system we have now is not working. We need to move to a different thing that makes sure it's harder for kids to get marijuana, that we have better regulation on the roads so that we have safer roads. I think a regulated and legalized market is probably the way to go. The challenge is with the opiate epidemic that we have and other things that are happening, people are appropriately cautious. So we're trying to address the issues that we need to this year. We may move this bill forward, but I think it's going to take a couple years.
Acknowledging the upcoming turnover in the executive and legislative leadership and the advent of a new biennium, what issues will need to be tackled in the future by your successors?
Well, I think that the issues that we have to grapple with are issues that need to be grappled with on a national level. Like many other places in the country, we continue to see income disparity in the population. People feel like they're working harder and they're having a harder time getting ahead. And so making sure that we put in place policies that set a floor so that if people are working hard, they're going to be treated right. It's stuff like paid leave for sick leave. It's minimum wage increases. It's paid family leave. It's making sure that there's a floor for people who are working hard. We also need to make sure that our kids continue to be well educated and that we're building out the infrastructure that's going to allow us to have a strong economy. At the end of the day, We want to make sure that this is a place that people want to live, but where they can also make a living. So those are the issues that my successors are going to have to grapple with.
Mr. Speaker, 14 years in the House, 4 terms as Speaker. Would you share some of the key highlights?
Well, I mean, my first year, we were faced with a veto of marriage equality. I was new as Speaker, and we have a national spotlight on the Vermont legislature to see whether we could advance civil rights. That was certainly a highlight when we won that veto override, and that was definitely something that I still get people coming to me every day about. I think this year, passing paid sick leave for all Vermonters was a big deal from my perspective because, like I said before, people are working harder to try to get ahead, but they're not making progress. And we need to set that floor and recognize if you're going to work hard, you're going to get certain benefits no matter who you are.
Speaker of the House, Shap Smith, thanks so much for being back with us here on Newsmakers.
My pleasure. Thanks, Eric.
And thank you for watching this edition of Comcast Newsmakers. I'm Eric Clemons. See you next time.